Okay, the first thing you need to know about selling on eBay is about the feedback system. And again, if you are an experienced seller, this is a great video to watch because you may not know about all of these nuances with feedback and things change over the years. So I hope this information will be helpful. So, your feedback score is a combination of ratings from trading partners rating you from both buying and selling. If you are brand new to eBay and you have never bought or sold anything, you need to start off as a buyer because number one, you need to experience eBay as a buyer to understand how it all works. And there's no risk in being a buyer. Second reason is you need to get some feedback on your account. It is extremely difficult to sell when you have zero feedback. And number three, having zero feedback and a recent open date makes you a prime target for scams. Because when we look at the feedback page in just a minute, buyers can look and see when you opened your account and how much feedback you have. And unfortunately, there are some unscrupulous people on eBay that will target new people for scams. And this is something I'm very passionate about educating about. When I was working for another company coaching from 2009 to 2013, that's all I did all day long was phone calls, Skype coaching, teaching people how to do eBay. And it was a lot of people, older folks, baby boomers, or that just weren't real internet savvy and they didn't understand that they could be targeted for scams. And I saw so many people get taken by this, and it just kills me because that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I just hate to see people taken advantage of. So I'm really passionate about educating new people on how to protect yourself. eBay, of course, is 99% all great buyers, no problems, but then there's that 1% that gets in there that can screw things up. So I've got a couple of videos I want you to watch that are posted below this video, the links, and these are some common scams that you need to be aware of as a new seller. One of them is when you get offers for something that is way above your asking price. I mean, that is just a huge red flag. And then the other one is about selling iPhones and electronics. So those are the two big ones that I saw a lot and saw people get taken advantage of. So if you're new and you don't know about these, please watch those videos below so that you will be informed. Now, if you have an existing eBay account, it's best to use that one and not start over. I get this question all the time. And you don't need separate buyer and seller accounts. That's an old concept. Back in the day, people wanted to keep what they were buying private, so they would have two different user IDs. You can set your listings to be private if you want. Your feedback to be private so that whatever you buy, it doesn't show up. But that was when the community was much, much smaller, and people used to look up each other and see what their friend bought or their cousin bought or whatever it was. Or if they were buying things to resell, which is called eBay arbitrage. You basically buy something from a poorly presented listing or underpriced listing and then resell that. That is all explained in my virtual picking course if you're interested in that topic. So just make a note of that. That's something that you can do if you don't have access to inventory or if you're not able to get out and shop. If you're disabled, if you're a caregiver, if you have a lot of children at home and you just can't get out and shop, you can actually find things on eBay, buy them for cheap, and then resell them for much more. So I have a whole course on that. But if you already have an eBay account, you really want to use that one because it's established. It doesn't have that new open date on it. You've got some feedback on it. It's been there for months or years, some people even decades, and you won't look brand new. And that's really important to keep those scammers away from you. And as far as search placement, I don't have any proof of this, but it is my gut feeling that the more established your account is, the higher you're going to place in search. This is a very complicated algorithm that nobody really knows all of the factors, but I feel like if you're brand new, you don't get as much exposure as you would if your account is established. So if you're brand new now, you'll get there. Your account's going to be established in the future. But if you already have an account you can use, you should definitely use that one because you've already got that history, and that can work in your favor, not just for search, but when buyers are looking at your account, they're going to see, oh, this person's been around for a while, it's established. So this is what your feedback page looks like. And it's got a lot of information on here, but one thing some people don't realize is when you go down to the bottom of the page, the bottom of this header, you've got all these different tabs. So you can do this when you're looking at a seller that you want to buy things from, or a buyer who might be buying things from you if they've asked a question. So just realize that your buyers may be looking at this information. So they can choose the all feedback tab. And so like mine says 16,000 feedback received. That's like all of it combined over time. Then feedback as a seller, and you're going to have a number under that. So if you're brand new or you've only been buying and you've never been selling, you're going to have a low number there. So people who are on eBay to do unscrupulous things may be looking at this, and they can recognize that you haven't sold very many things. So even if you have a higher feedback number, like 1,000, but you haven't sold anything, that's going to be a low number right there. So just be aware that there's a way to see that. You've also got a tab that says feedback as a buyer. So like mine says 411. I know it's way higher than that. I think eBay didn't start tracking this until about maybe 2012, something like that. So these numbers aren't 100% correct, but you can see how much feedback someone has as a buyer, okay? Then this is a really important one, feedback left for others. So you can look and see what kind of feedback buyers leave for sellers. And I look at this all the time, especially when I get really picky questions from buyers through the messaging system. And I just get a gut feeling that this may not go well. This may be a person where nothing's going to satisfy them. You know what I'm talking about. You get gut feelings about people like that. And I'll go look at their feedback left for others, and there's a bunch of negatives or neutrals. And that tells me this is not somebody I want to work with. And then you can block that person and they can't buy from you. So I really only look for this when there's some kind of red flag, they're asking something very detailed, or they tell this whole long story about some problem they had with another seller, and it just tips you off to like, oh, this is one of those people, like if in a restaurant, they're always going to find something wrong with the food. There's always going to be a problem. So you can check that tab to see what kind of feedback does this buyer leave, and do I really want to work with them? Now, if you've watched my sales update videos, you'll know that I started tracking what percentage of buyers leave feedback over a month's time. And in my experience, only about 30 to 40% of buyers leave feedback. So don't worry when you start selling things if you're not getting a bunch of feedback, because they just don't leave it. And especially buyers who are not sellers don't understand how important it is to us to get feedback. I do not recommend reaching out to your buyers and asking them for feedback because, it's just like poking a stick into a beehive. You don't know what you're going to get. So just keep moving forward. You'll get feedback eventually. Sometimes people don't leave it till a month or two later. eBay sends them little nudges and emails. It says, how was your purchase? Please leave feedback for your seller. And some will do it and some won't. So just understand it is what it is. And I don't do all that stuff where you put a card or a note in the package asking them for feedback. That stuff just goes in the trash. If people are going to leave it, they're going to leave it. And don't message them and ask for it from your buyers just because you may tip them off to say something neutral or negative. And it's just better to let sleeping dogs lie on that and not mess with it. Now, sellers can only leave positive feedback for buyers. Buyers can leave positive, neutral, or negative. And this is because when eBay first started, sellers could leave positive, negative, or neutral as well. In 2008, eBay changed that policy because sellers could hold buyers hostage or commit feedback extortion by threatening with negative feedback. So, for example, let's say somebody bought something from you and they were slow payer. They didn't pay quickly. So the seller would say, if you don't pay me right away, I'm going to leave you negative feedback. And stuff like that was going on. So eBay took that power away from the sellers. And it's not fair, but it is what it is, and that's what we have to deal with. Or, maybe the seller shipped an item and knew that it was perfectly fine, and the buyer would say, there's something wrong with this. I want $20 refund, a partial refund, and then the seller could just say nope and leave negative feedback. So eBay tried to control that a little bit by taking that ability away from the sellers. And it's not fair because sometimes buyers do deserve negatives and neutrals. But what we can do is file unpaid item strikes. And that's after somebody buys something and doesn't pay for it. There is something called the unpaid item assistant, or you can do it manually where you go in and open a case if something hasn't been paid for and the buyer gets so many days to pay for it. And if they don't ever pay for it, then they get what's called an unpaid item strike. And that's just a note on their record that they didn't pay for something. And after so many of those, they get kicked off of eBay. So really, the best recourse we have for people who don't pay for their items is to always file unpaid item strikes. That's about all we can do. There's a lot more to how to deal with uncooperative buyers, and we'll get into all that later. There's lots of stuff in the course materials in the premium library about how to deal with buyers, but that's just part of the business. It's part of being a reseller. You have to deal with people, so it's just a matter of learning to do it the most professional way possible. Now, within the feedback system, there's something called detailed seller ratings. So it's those gold stars over there on the bottom right. And the buyer gets to grade the seller on different criteria about the transaction. So item as described is very important. Communication, did you answer their questions promptly? A lot of the communication is automated now. So when you print a shipping label, the buyer gets an email that says your item is on the way, it's been shipped, and here's the tracking number. So the only way you would get rated low on communication if you had some kind of back and forth with the buyer that you were a slow or poor communicator, they might rate you low on that. Shipping time, that's actually more the handling time that you offer. Did you get it shipped quickly and within the time you promised? And that we'll go over all of that when we do some sample listings, and you'll see where that handling time is. Handling time just means the amount of time it takes you to get it in the mail, and it's all about what you promise up front. So, not everybody can ship the same day or within one business day. If you've got it set at 3 days, then that's what you need to do. Just stand by what you promise and do what you say you're going to do. Then we've got shipping and handling charges. Now, on this one, if you use calculated shipping, which we will go over, that's the most fair way to do it. eBay wants buyers to rate sellers on this so that sellers don't price gouge. You keep it fair. And if you offer free shipping, then the buyer doesn't even get to rate you on this. It's grayed out, because if it was free, there's nothing they can complain about. So we'll get into all the ifs, ands, and buts about shipping and handling a little bit later. But when you buy something on eBay, which is another reason you want to be a buyer, so that you can see what is on the buyer side of things, they get to rate you on all these different criteria. So this is a purchase that was made. It asks, did the item arrive on time? That means within the time promised. How was your experience? You get to pick positive, neutral, or negative, and you can't do neutral or negative until 7 days have passed. And that's because eBay is giving both sides a chance to work out any problems. If the item got lost in the mail, if there was an issue with the item, they want you to take some time to think about it and work it out before jumping into a negative. And this is actually a great feature. Years ago when eBay first started, this did not exist, and you could get mad and just leave a negative like immediately after you bought something from somebody. And that was really not fair to the sellers, because we didn't have a chance to work things out. And then you can put in a comment. Well, you have to put in some kind of comment, good transaction, fast shipping, whatever you want to say. And then you can rate the details. You get to choose the stars here. So that's what it looks like. And this is how it looks filled in. And then that goes into the seller's metrics. And overall, you want to have a certain level of performance standards. So I explained all of that to say you need to be aware that as a seller, you're going to have to meet certain performance standards to continue to sell and to be eligible for discounts and top rated seller and that kind of thing. So you can always access your performance standards in your seller hub. eBay allows a margin of error, so the standards are reasonable. If you have issues, you can address them before it's too late and your account gets suspended. So to find your service metrics, that's what they're called, you just go to your seller hub and you'll go to the performance tab. And this is something that maybe if you have been selling on eBay for a while, you may not even have known these were there. And then you want to choose service metrics under the performance tab. And it explains what they are. Good service is good for business. This dashboard shows how your service levels compare to other sellers with a similar selling profile. By making small changes, you can help meet or beat customer expectations. With these changes, you may improve your seller level and help increase your sales. So this is what your service metrics look like. There's two categories: items not as described and then item not received. So this is mine, item not as described. I've got 2 returns, and I believe this is within a 3-month period where they said the item was not as described. And let me just tell you, this is going to happen. Even if you describe it perfectly, they can still say something's not as described. That's just human nature. But overall, this is not that hard to maintain. You just take pictures of everything and put it in your description, and usually it's fine. So eBay does allow this margin of error. So on mine, it says total transactions 420. Only 2 of the items were not as described. And that again is the buyer's opinion. So I'm doing just fine. I'm in the average range, the low end of the average range, nothing to worry about. Now, if you want to check this, I would say check it monthly and make sure that everything is in line. If you see there's a problem, like you're getting a lot of returns for item not as described, something's wrong. Something's wrong with your listings. Your photos need to be better. You need to do a better job describing items. Maybe you're saying items are new without tag because they seem new to you, but maybe you need to change that to pre-owned, that kind of thing. So this is what you want to keep an eye on, so that if you get into that danger zone and your account could be suspended, you can address these issues before it gets in the danger zone and fix them. Okay, now there's another tab, item not received. So I don't have any of these. This is if you just didn't ship something, or maybe it got lost in the mail and you didn't address it and refund the money and then file the claim with the post office and all that kind of stuff. I think eBay put this here for people who just get lazy and don't ship things, because a lot of times life happens, their eBay business takes a back seat to what's going on in their life, and there's ways to handle that. You can put your store on vacation, you can increase your handling time. You can basically pause your store by putting it on vacation if there's a family emergency or something happens and you can't deal with your business. But the answer is not to just not ship things, and eBay doesn't want that happening. Or out of stock items and you just don't ship it and you keep the customer's money. That's, a big no-no, and eBay doesn't want that happening. So they still give you a margin of error here for items not received, but with tracking automatically included on everything you ship through eBay, if there's ever an item not received, you can address that immediately, refund the customer's money, and then file a claim through USPS to get the money back on a lost package. So that's easy to solve, easy to resolve that problem. Okay, there's two different ways that eBay calculates service metrics. They are evaluated on the 20th of each month. So if there's going to be a change, it will show up like on the 21st of the month. And I can tell you, don't ever call eBay on the 20th or the 21st of the month, because those phone lines are jammed with people whose metrics have dropped and they're panicked and they're calling and trying to get things changed or figured out what's going on. So if you have to call eBay, don't ever do it on the 20th or the 21st. Anyway, they evaluate the metrics in these two ways. Sellers with 400 or more transactions during the last 3 months, you're evaluated on your transactions during the previous 3-month period. Sellers with fewer than 400 transactions during the last 3 months, you're evaluated on your transaction over the previous 12-month period. So basically, if you sell more than 400 items in 3 months, they compact your evaluation period into a 3-month time. And it's so when you sell more, you're evaluated over a shorter time period. Okay, so why am I telling you all this information that's probably making your head explode? Because eBay's tracking it. And the bottom line is just describe things accurately. Ship things within the promised time frame. That's really the only two things you need to worry about. Make sure you've described it. And if there's something wrong with an item, just show a picture of it and explain it. Things with defects and damage sell all the time. It doesn't mean you can't sell it. Just make sure you've done everything you can to inform the buyer of what they're buying. That's all there is to it. If you are brand new and have no feedback, you really need to buy a few small, inexpensive items that you will actually use so you can build up that feedback. So you don't want a zero. You don't want to look new. And you want to participate in eBay as a buyer to see how things work. So if you're brand new, that's part of your assignment here. Be a buyer first so you can experience the buyer side and build up some feedback. But you don't want to waste your money. Buy things you're actually going to use. Some suggestions are cosmetics for the ladies, health and beauty items, shampoo, soaps, hand lotion, suntan products, all of that stuff, sunscreen, chapstick, just little things so you can have some transactions, office supplies, candles, consumables, stuff you're actually going to use just to get some transactions. In the next section, I'm going to cover how to buy an item on eBay. And even if you are a seasoned seller, you may not know some of these new features have been added. So let's move on to the next section.